It wasn't too long ago, a couple of months now, that I decided to go into the loft of my garage and pull out my old beer can collection. I think I have about 300 beer cans, and I hadn't looked at them in, 20, 25 years, maybe more. And I got thinking about the Beer Can Collectors of America, a club that I remember being formed a few years ago when I was collecting cans. And I found out that it is now the Brewery Collectibles Club of America, and it's celebrating its 50th year. And the office manager is Kevin Kious, and I'm here with Kevin at his office in Fenton. Kevin, congratulations on 50 years and collecting beer cans and other collectibles.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
So tell us about the club now. It started 50 years ago, officially April 15th of 1970.
Yeah, it started out small. Denver Wright Jr. was our founder. There was an article in the Post-Dispatch about him, and about 7 or 8 other collectors saw the article, contacted him, and eventually in a year or so later, the club was formed. I believe we had 48 members the first year. And then we had some explosive growth in the 80s when all the kids were collecting beer cans. We actually had over 10,000 members for a couple years. But we've gone slowly downhill since. We've kind of held our own the last 8 or 10 years, but a lot of the kids dropped out quickly, of course, when they went to college and pursued other interests. And now we still have 3,200 members strong, though, so anybody that tells you that beer can collecting is dead is wrong.
What is unique about beer cans? Why do people want to collect them?
Well, as we like to say, they're little 12-ounce works of art. A lot of them have exciting graphics, especially the older cans. And now we've got the craft brewing movement, and they're just making a ton of cans now with very interesting designs.
Yeah, I remember when I was collecting, there were, you had Iron City in Pittsburgh, which you still have. You had Blatz, I think that was out of Chicago, possibly?
Actually, Milwaukee? And Peoria Heights once Pabst took over Blatz.
Okay, so you've got all these kind of regional beers. Schmidt's another one, Schaefer, Narragansett. You had all those regional beers that made it really fun to collect. Now, for a while, did some of those disappear because the big guys took over, and so, those were not as plentiful?
Oh, yeah, huge consolidation in the brewing industry, 60s, 70s, and 80s. A lot of the old brands were produced by a handful of breweries, and the graphics on the cans got worse. They didn't put much pride in their cans in the 70s.
And now, though, you've got the craft breweries, as you mentioned, coming back, and they, after being in bottles for a long time, they're getting into cans now, too, so that's got to make it exciting.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's really exploded over the last 3 or 4 years. The percentage of craft brews put in cans versus bottles, I'm sure it's more in cans now than it was in bottles, which was the complete opposite 5-10 years ago. And yeah, they're doing a lot of exciting things now with the new cans.
What are some of the things that they're doing with these new cans?
Oh, just some incredible designs. I don't even know where they come up with some of the designs. And there's so many cans, they have to come up with a unique name, and so you can build your can design around the name of the can. And it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun again. And now let's go back to the old days. And like I mentioned, Schmidt, they were one that used to have all the wildlife scenes on them. Talk about some of the real unique cans that you have seen or collected over the time.
Well, the Schmidt's wildlife scene, that's a big one. Everybody likes those. They actually put out the first set of those in the 1950s, and I actually think they're still making them. Maybe not a big set, but occasionally they put out a Schmidt's can that's got some of the animals on it. And there's a ton of unique cans. If you think locally, Griesedick Brothers put out a couple of colored can sets in the 50s. I believe 6, 8 different colors each year. And boy, if you find one of those, you've found hundreds of dollars worth of can.
And I've seen the Falstaff 1776 cans from back in at the bicentennial, and some local ones like that. Iron City, well known for celebrating the Pittsburgh championships. So you have a lot of the local breweries that kind of push those local and national events.
Yeah, there was a lot of commemorative cans in the 70s, commemorating everything from the Pittsburgh Steelers with Iron City to Bean and Bacon Days in Iowa.
Bean and Bacon Days. Now, I got to ask you about that.
Yeah, I think every local fair and get-together in Iowa had a commemorative can in the 80s. There's an extreme number of them, and they're common, however, not rare.
visiting with Kevin Kious. He is the office manager of Brewery Collectibles Club of America. It used to be the beer can collectors. You decided to expand it a little bit. Why did you decide to do that?
Well, to be honest with you, beer can collecting got a little boring in the 80s and 90s. The graphics weren't good. There weren't many of that different ones being produced. And so a lot of our members started collecting other things in addition to cans, bottles, signs, lights, anything with a brewery name on it. And so the name change was basically to reflect that and to also appeal to people who didn't just collect beer cans.
And so you have over 3,000 members, as we mentioned earlier. How many cans do you have, and how many cans do some of your members have?
I personally have probably 500 cans in my collection. I used to have a lot more, but I only like to display or to keep what I can look at, so I threw away all the ones that were in boxes and just have them on shelves now. There's other people that have collections of tens of thousands of cans. I think probably the most famous collector is Jeff Lebo, who lives in the Philadelphia area. I'm sure he's lost track of how many cans he has, but it's at least 30,000, and he actually has got 2 houses that he's got them all on display.
Oh, my goodness, 2 houses for beer cans. And as I remember back, the cone tops were always the ones to get. Those were the expensive ones, the hard-to-find ones. What are some of the unique types of cans like that we used to collect and that are on the market now?
Well, the cone tops are still very popular. Those were cans that I guess they actually made them from after Prohibition to about 1960. It was cheaper to install a can or a line that filled cone top cans on a bottling line, so that's what they went with. There's also cans called crown tainers that were primarily made during the war that are similar to cone top cans but a different shape, really unusual looking cans. And then there's the flat tops, which some flat tops are as desirable as the cone tops. They're pretty much interchangeable. And those were the cans that you had to use a can opener to open. I'm sure some of us older people remember them.
Oh, yeah.
And they finally went away in the 1960s when they went to pull tabs. And now, of course, we've got stay tabs because the pull tabs were causing pollution problems.
And cut toes on beaches.
Oh, no doubt, yeah, and cut fingers trying to get some of them open.
Uh-huh.
And now, of course, now all the cans are aluminum, but various kinds of cans put out by the craft beers. Some still go to the expense to have the cans painted and filled. And other ones just use stickers, all kinds of different shaped stickers, or shrink wrap cans are produced now. So it's changed quite a bit over the 80 years when they've been canning beer.
And what about the value of some of these cans? If I've got my 300, and what are the chances that some of those might be worth some pretty decent money?
Well, the key to value is pre-1970. Pretty much cans from 1970 and newer aren't worth a heck of a lot. There's a few exceptions, and just about every can before 1970 is worth $5. But the amazing thing is there's been beer cans in the last 3 or 4 years sell at auction for prices like $29,000, $35,000. There's a lot of people with a lot of money who collect rare cans.
What kind of cans are we talking about that were worth that kind of money?
We're talking about both flat tops and cone tops. Probably the most famous can, a famous Chicago collector sold his cans at auction. I guess it was 6 or 7 years ago, probably by now. A Gibbons Bach can that was in his collection sold for $29,000, and there was a buyer's premium in that auction, so it was like $35,000. Just a can that had really good graphics, really rare, and was in really good condition.
Wow, that's amazing. So here you are, you're getting ready to celebrate your 50th anniversary. The anniversary technically April 15th, but the celebration's in September when you have your CANvention. Tell us about that.
Yeah, our annual CANvention is going to be in St. Louis this year. It's the 50th. The first CANvention was in St. Louis, as was the 25th, so naturally we would come back to St. Louis. It's downtown at the Marriott Grand is going to be our home hotel, and it'll be in America's Center is where our trade floor is going to be.
A lot of beer cans to look at then?
There will be a ton of beer cans. I anticipate that we'll probably have at least 600 tables, and they'll be full of cans, lights, bottles, you name it.
Where can we go to find out more?
You can go to our website at bcca.com.
Very simple, bcca.com. It's a fun hobby. I'm glad I pulled mine out and started looking at it again, and we will check back again before September. Kevin Kious from the Brewery Collectibles Club of America, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Coming